The GLC 43 returns for the 2024 model year for this next generation, second generation of the GLC. And so we're looking at the GLC Coupe version here, which gives you the racier roofline here, but this of course is still available in the regular GLC body style as well. But as far as this next generation GLC 43, well, the big news here, of course, is that it got rid of the twin-turbo 3-liter V6 engine and replaced it with a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. But it's a pretty special Turbo 4. It does over 400 horsepower, and it's also the world's first electrically assisted turbocharged motor in a mass-produced vehicle, at least. And so, you know, it's a very high-tech, very impressive vehicle in a variety of ways, and I'll show that off whenever we hit the road. But on the outside here, I'd say that it looks very nice as well. The only downside is you have these reflector LED lights as standard instead of nice projectors like you get on the upgraded versions of this. But other than that, you know, really nice bold front end here with that larger grille with the vertical slats here for the AMG version. The more aggressive front bumper, of course, for the AMG. This one also has 21-inch wheels coming down to the sides that are a very unique and cool shape. It's almost kind of inspired by the electric Mercedes in the lineup, but they're hiding nice big brakes there. And you also have the new turbo electrified badge here on the side to let everyone know that you know, you have some electrification to go along with that performance. And then yeah, you have the same kind of familiar silhouette as you saw in the prior gen GLC Coupe. And then out back there, it's a little more bulbous, I think, than the last gen GLC Coupe. You have, you know, very rounded back end there. You have a little bit of an integrated spoiler and a very small rear window, which doesn't help visibility very much, but you know, gives it a very cool hatchback coupe kind of look for those that are going for that. And you also have a little bit of a rear diffuser there and the quad exhaust tips sticking out, which is a fun touch. And so overall, I think it looks really nice, especially in this metallic blue color. And I think it, you know, is right in line with what you'd expect out of an AMG. The interior of the GLC 43 is, of course, a very nice place to be. This is a Mercedes that costs nearly $80,000. It's going to be really nice. You know, Mercedes does such a good job with the materials that they use these days, the technology. It all just feels very expensive in a very impressive way, while some others do it in a more subtle fashion. Mercedes is a little more bold with the kind of stuff you get with, you know, these large metal air vents, even right at the top of the dash, which is rare these days with most screens being perched on the top instead. You know, this is really a nice integration in my opinion. But anyway, first thing, sitting down in these seats. This one has this regular AMG seat, but it's not the AMG Performance seat, which is a $2,500 option, and you can get these with a massage function and all that. This one does have heating and ventilation. Ventilation is still an extra cost option on these seats, but you know, they're perforated, have a little bit of a Alcantara insert in them here, and it's a sporty seat still. It just doesn't have really any customization as far as like your bolstering or anything like that I saw, so it's just, you know, a little more of a fixed setup, but it's a comfortable seat, and I had no real complaints, and I do like that it's still perforated leather and it's not all Alcantara like is the trend these days. But moving on to the steering wheel here, this is the new AMG wheel that, you know, all the AMGs have really, and it's a thicker wheel, but still is a great 9-3 grip, nice little 10 and 2 notches, and these double spokes are okay, except these touch sensitive controls can get a little bit annoying sometimes and aren't super responsive all the time, so I don't love that. They also, being piano black, get lots of fingerprints and other, you know, smudges and stuff on them, so don't love the execution there. It looks nice whenever it's clean, but I do really like how you have these little AMG controller wheels here, with the one controlling your drive mode and the other one controlling a variety of other things. You can have, you know, two things always present, but you can also tap that to switch over to other things there for quick, easy reach, like for manual shifting or turning on the exhaust. And a really nice integration the way they've, you know, incorporated that, and something I'd like to see other manufacturers copy, honestly, because I think it's actually a really well done thing. But moving on to the gauges here, you have, of course, the digital gauge cluster here. It's about a 12.3-inch display, and you know, it's the usual familiar Mercedes stuff in the middle there as far as, you know, the various things you can scroll through, including some performance metrics here, since this is the AMG after all. But you do also have a lot of customization as well, so you can go in and see the different themes there. There are a lot of themes. I'd argue this is probably the most amount of themes that a vehicle offers these days. Just so much customization there as far as exactly how you want that information displayed, and really well done. You can also get a head-up display on these in the Pinnacle trims. This one does not have that, surprisingly, but you know, that'll be a nice little extra enhancement if that's something you like. That is available. Coming over to the middle of the dashboard here, you have, you know, one of those smaller Mercedes screens these days, with everything else getting these hyper screens and these giant things. I actually really like this screen though. It's really nicely set up still. It does wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. It's connected reliably all week, hasn't had any glitches at all for this system in particular, which is great. And you see it, defaults to a primary map view there whenever you're just on the home screen. And tuning radio stations, things like that is pretty easy. Climate's all within easy reach. And so a really well done system. And I do love that you can still have CarPlay and still have the climate controls up there, so you don't have any compromises or anything. And I actually really like the way that's set up. I think it's really well done. You do have this little row of other touch buttons here, including, unfortunately, another capacitive touch slider for volume. You can tap the negative or the positive there to go up in single increments, but it's just not as good as the old Mercedes scroller wheels. I miss those scroller wheels that they had for volume, and I really wish they'd bring those back. But other than that minor complaint, really well done as far as all that goes, in my opinion. Also, this system is hooked up in this one to an optional Burmester stereo, which is 15 speakers, 710 watts of power, and it sounds really good. It's not one of the top Mercedes stereos out there, but I mean, it's, yes, less than $1,000 for the upgrade. So it's, a very accessible upgrade, gives you the nice metal speaker grills and all of that, and should be, totally fine for most people, and, really nice sounding stereo. Burmesters are always fantastic in these Mercedes. And it is a 3D stereo as well. So I actually really enjoyed it this week. It's not quite as fancy as like the E-Class All-Terrain that I just had not too long ago, which had these seats that had speakers built into them. It's not quite that immersive, but still a very good system. But moving on here to the storage space in the GLCs. It's pretty good. So in the pockets here in the doors, it's a nice large pocket. You can fit a really big bottle in there, so I do like that. In the middle here, you do have your two cup holders and another little tray here. But my biggest complaint is that the wireless phone charger is really buried in here. And if you have any drink in here, forget about accessing your phone or putting your phone in there. So not a good setup for that. I mean, I can appreciate the design of this whole thing. It's very flowing and elegant, but just not very practical. So I guess they just kind of sacrificed some function for the form there. Another thing that you'll see, there's two USB-C jacks here in the center console. But the funny thing is, this is the first time I've ever seen this. Mercedes is charging people to upgrade to USB-C jacks. It's $300, not a huge price, but for USB-C jacks that are, pretty cheap to upgrade to, there's two here. You get two in the back, and I think there's two also in the armrest here in the middle. So 6 USB-C jacks total for $300. You can be the judge as far as whether or not that is a good value, but it's just really an example of Mercedes nickel and diming everybody. And it also makes it a pain because you have to select all the right options in order to get these basic things whenever Honda Civics are upgrading to USB-C jacks. It's just part of a regular, model year change. And the fact that you got to pay extra for that in a Mercedes just honestly is a little cringy, to be completely honest. But anyway, beyond that, you also have the center armrest, which nicely splits in the middle and has some padding on it here. And you have a little removable tray, as well as, again, those pricey USB-C jacks and another, extra cubby beneath there. And so, it's right in line with what you would expect from something in this class for the most part. Although Mercedes does have some better integrations with interior storage space, as do many of their competitors. X3s and stuff have a much more usable center area here than this does. So, it is what it is. See if it works for you. But, it also feels a little tight in here. That's the other complaint I can say about the GLC is, you think, going up to GLC, you're going to get like more space than a GLB or something like that. And if you're an adult, I'd say it's okay as long as you're not too tall. But one of the biggest complaints here, so we have a forward-facing car seat for our 3-year-old daughter. And the way that's set up, you can see the way these seats curve here, and it gives you some extra legroom if you're an adult. But if you have a car seat setup, it's a rare, kind of circumstance, kind of a niche problem. But for this setup in particular, not a lot of space for the rear occupants there, the little kids in the car seats. And then, like my wife had to have her seat really far forward, so she barely had any legroom. And even me sitting in her sitting position here, I only have about an inch or two of legroom to spare. So it's a little tight. So honestly, if you are in the car seat stage, I'd recommend probably going up to a GLE. Just general advice as far as this generation GLC in particular, it's just not as large as you might expect looking at it from the outside. And so the only other complaint, but otherwise this interior is beautiful, and especially beautiful at night with the ambient lighting you have here. It's all very, very elegant and impressive. But moving on to the rest of the back seat there, you will see that, it's a nice size back seat, again, for adults because of those curvatures in the seats there. And me sitting behind myself, I have, about 3 or 4 inches of legroom to spare. So it's actually quite good, if you are an adult and you don't need the top of that seat back space there. You also see they have their own air vents, and then, again, more of those pricey USB-C jacks back there, and a little tray as well. There's also a fold-down center armrest with 2 cup holders that pop out of it, and pockets in those doors as well. They're also treated to the view of this panoramic roof, Mercedes calls it. I'm not sure if I'd go that far because it doesn't go the whole width of the roof here. It's an extra large moonroof is what I would kind of call it. But, you know, nice to have nonetheless. And that does actually come standard, believe it or not, on the GLC 43. So they give you a panoramic roof as standard, but they can't throw in USB-C jacks. Don't understand it, but I'll move on. Moving on to the trunk space here in the GLC. That's another area where, you know, the Coupe, you definitely pay a price for the Coupe shape. So the load floor is very high, and of course with the slope there, you're not going to have a lot of stacking ability either. So consider it, you know, about as much practicality as you would get from a regular sedan, maybe even slightly less. But the good news is when you do lift up the floor, you will see that you have a huge space. Unfortunately, I don't know why they had to put all the tire inflator stuff there on the right hand side, because otherwise you could probably drop that floor down much lower. But you can see even in its current, you know, configuration here, you have enough space for one or maybe two very large duffel bags, and even some space there even further up. So there's a lot more space there than first glance, but, you know, again, just as far as stacking ability and laying stuff flat, you know, not a whole lot of ability there, and you're going to want to go for the regular GLC. And it's, again, great that you, of course, have that option. So if you want extra practicality, I'd skip this Coupe version and go for the regular GLC 43. But let's start up and go for a drive. The AMGs now have this really nice new key. It's metal chunk here at AMG here on the front. You also have it nicely saying AMG here on the back as well. And this key is one of the heaviest keys I've encountered, and it really feels like it's milled out of a solid chunk of aluminum. Super high quality. I adore this key. Arguably probably one of the most impressive keys in the car world currently. Really well done there. I love these new keys. But anyway, it is of course keyless access, keyless entry, push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the GLC 43. So the first thing you notice about this vehicle, I think the first thing that I noticed about it that really jumped out at me, you'll notice in the first few feet of a test drive, that is that first off, there is some throttle lag here. I've complained about this in especially the 4-cylinder powered Mercedes models, and especially the AMG ones. Like I was just in a GLA 35 not too long ago. This has the same thing where the throttle tuning in these is really delayed, where I'm like often waiting a good bit for it to actually give me the response that I'm looking for. And it's also combined with a frustrating experience for the brakes, where they are very touchy. And even after a week of driving, I'm still not perfect with a smooth brake engagement on this thing. It's really something you gotta get used to, and there's a heavy learning curve there for sure. So I don't love that. I also don't love the transmission. Another thing you'll feel right off the bat, this has this 9-speed multi-clutch, which is a wet starting clutch for this AMG transmission. And you know, it's a 9-speed thing. It's been around for a while, so it's nothing new, but I just have never loved the smoothness of it, or lack thereof. It's just, you can feel the engagement points still, and the shifts are still rough. Even in comfort mode, I got everything in comfort mode, so nothing should be rough or, you know, engaging, and yet it is, and not what I want it to be. You know, I'm just trying to cruise around quietly and sedately with the family, and instead I'm getting these jerky shifts, and it's this, you know, rough experience that's also combined with even the adaptive dampers, which this does have in their comfort mode. It still is stiffer than I would say, you know, the competitors are, the X4 M40i, and you know, even the SQ5 Sportback. You know, I mean, it's been a while since I've driven both of those, but I remember, you know, they were softer in their setup, especially in comfort mode here. Mercedes just typically tends to tune their suspensions a little stiffer, I'd say, than, you know, the other competitors. So just make sure you can take this for a test drive on your own kind of roads, see if it's something that'll work for you. I mean, you know, it's been no hardship living with it this week, but again, as a reviewer, you know, comparing it to other things and being, you know, critical, I mean, this is just stuff that isn't as well executed as some of those competitors. So other than that, though, it's a fine experience. It's pretty nice and quiet here, aside from, you know, hearing the engine, of course, but very little outside noise. And you know, it's also rattle free in here. It's nice and solid and feels, you know, very well insulated, very luxurious. But I'm going to go ahead and put it up into the Sport Plus mode, and we'll leave it in the automatic shifting mode for now. But let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Okay. I love the crackles and pops on the upshifts there, and it does it occasionally on the downshifts as well. You can hear a little bit on the outside there. but it's a good amount of punch. Honestly, I was expecting a little bit more, but I think it's the fact that, you know, these weigh almost, I think, 4,600 pounds, and, you know, 416 horsepower only goes so far when you're talking about something that heavy. So yeah, it's the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine here, and it's, again, the world's first mass-produced electrically assisted turbocharger. So basically the electric motor spools up the turbo while it's waiting for the exhaust gases to come through and give you the rest of that turbo propulsion. And so they say it's supposed to reduce lag, but it's funny because this is still one of the laggiest experiences from a turbocharged performance vehicle that I've experienced in a while, and just, you know, still feel like there's, and see, even that, okay, it took me too long. I'm in Sport Plus mode, and I had to lean on the gas there for a solid second or two before it gave me that downshift. Others just do that stuff faster. And that's the kind of thing that, you know, it's not like I'm not even in the right modes anymore or anything. And so I've just really, this week, kind of noticed that if I'm in a rush and I actually want to have, you know, exactly what the car, you know, what I want it to do, then I got to take my matters in my own hands and just do manual shifting. And so trying those out, that is where it's pretty quick. Now, again, it's still, whenever I'm pulling a paddle for an upshift, there are a few times where it is still going to be a little slow, not quite as fast as the ZF8 speed, but it's not bad. You know, we will continue to test that out a little bit more here. But you know, one good thing is whenever you are, you know, paddle shifting around here at lower speeds, it is pretty quick and responsive. But again, there is still like a split-second delay where, I don't know, it's got like a thinking that it has to do, a little thinking period before it gives it to you. And it's just something you don't have to wait around for in some of the ZF, you know, transmissions and some of the others out there, Porsche PDK and others that are much quicker. But anyway, coming up from corners here that I always take, let's see how this thing handles. So, diving in, it's pretty good. So we got a lot of grip here, and that is one of the things that really helps this. We also have reversible steer, which can turn up to 2.5 degrees to give you, you know, a little bit more of a smaller feeling, not only just, you know, on sporty roads like this, but also whenever you're parking and things like that. But and it's actually got a little bit of a tail-happy kind of vibe to it, which is cool. So that is one thing with this AMG version of the 4MATIC all-wheel drive system, is it has a permanent torque split, surprisingly. It's a 69% of the power goes to the rear, and the other 31% goes to the front here. It seems like at all times. It was talking about in the press release how it's not actually really variable unless you go up to the 63 version of this, where it's a fully variable all-wheel drive system. But you do feel the weight, though. Again, like I said, it's just under 4,600 pounds, and so, you know, I mean, it's just, and you are sitting up higher, of course, being an SUV and all that, but I mean, it does it, and it does it well. But you know, you can tell that you're kind of fighting physics here a little bit, and that's okay. You know, again, it's this type of vehicle we're talking about, so I'm not going to act like it should, you know, be as lively as a low-slung sports car. But, you know, just make no mistake, even though this says Coupe in the name, you're going to be better off going for a CLE or something like that if you actually want a performance coupe that has better handling. But for the average person, you know, just going for a spirited drive, this is still going to be fun. And, you know, you do have some more aggressive stuff with the GLC 63E performance, even though that adds in, you know, the plug-in hybrid component and even more weight. You know, that is going to give you more power. It has also active roll stabilization and a few other tricks up its sleeve that you don't get here in this. You just have adaptive dampers on coil springs here, and then you have that reversible steer. You also do get bigger brakes, though. That is one of the things, of course, with AMGs. They're 14.6-inch rotors in the front on 4-piston calipers, and you have 14.2-inch rotors in the rear on single-piston floating calipers. And so, I mean, as far as braking goes, it is, you know, really good. Again, it's just, the brake pedal is just way too touchy. It's great if you're on, you know, back road, and again, you want to scrub off speed quickly, but, you know, whenever you're doing the 99% of regular driving like most people will do, where, you know, you really, again, got to fine-tune your braking input so that you're not upsetting yourself or others in the vehicle with your harsh braking. But I'm going to try a quick little brake torque launch here, and let's see how it goes. It's sport handling mode, race start. Listen to that. It squeezed me in with the seatbelt. And then it relaxed relaxes as you let off the gas there. That's brilliant. We're also now in the sport handling mode because I have the ESP in its sport mode, which is required for that launch control. But alright, so it felt a little faster there in that. It still isn't mind-blowing performance, but again, we're talking about the 43 version. You know, it's always the middle ground. It's not the full-blown AMG experience, but still, it's really fun. I really liked how it was like a rally start with it, you know, doing the anti-lag kind of deal. But anyway, other things about the engine to note here. So it's 369 pound-feet of torque to go along with that 416 horsepower. And by the way, for anyone keeping score at home, that is 31 more horsepower than the prior GLC 43 with the twin-turbo V6. But you do lose 15 pound-feet of torque compared to that twin-turbo V6. And again, you're going to be working with, you know, this engine that just relies on the turbo a little bit more, you know, and so it's not going to be quite as torquey or quite as smooth of an experience. That's the only thing. But yeah, this thing feels really, really good. And now we've caught up to traffic here. But yeah, it's, you know, 4.7 seconds 0 to 60 is what Mercedes claims. And so that sounds about right. You know, yeah, that's these days isn't anything crazy, especially in the electrified world we're living in. But, you know, to have those sounds, have the drama and the excitement, it's, you know, going to be totally fine and just, you know, a very fun experience for those who want, you know, sportier experience than a regular GLC, but again, don't want to go all the way up to the full 63 version. But here's some more corners here. We can try out a little bit more. You do also have brake-based torque vectoring in these, and I mean, I can really feel the rear wheel steer working though, and I think this sport handling mode certainly is helping me out a little bit more to make this feel a little bit more dynamic, and it does feel really good. You can also get dynamic engine mounts for $2,000 extra. You also get red calipers for that price tag, but it's just yeah, a little bit expensive. I don't know if that's something that's going to be worthwhile, but I mean, I'm really impressed though with the handling, and especially when you're going uphill there, where you're able to use that torque vectoring and that torque split a little bit more, versus going downhill where you kind of feel the weight getting you know, in your way a little bit more. But uphill, charging up a hill in this thing on a windy road, it's fantastic and very well done. So yeah, an absolute blast, and especially if you're someone who also, again, wants that lighter experience of this compared to the heavier 63, it's still, you know, enough performance to feel fast on the road and, you know, still give you lots of thrills, and do it, you know, with a little bit of a lighter package. And if you also want to custom tailor the experience to have some things sporty and some things not sporty, of course, you have the individual mode. In addition to all these various buttons, you can customize all the drive modes there on that menu, so you can have it, you know, exactly how you want everything to be set up and play around with it and find exactly what works for you. But you know, now back on a smoother road here in comfort mode. You know, on roads like this, you know, it's going to be totally fine. Again, still a little firmer than, you know, a regular Mercedes, of course, but that's part of the AMG sacrifice. Unfortunately, it isn't a best of both worlds kind of thing. You do still have to make that sacrifice of ride quality a little bit, but again, not too big of a deal, I don't think, and still is a totally fine daily driver. And now we're out on the highway here in the GLC 43, and it's a really nice highway cruiser, of course. Nice and quiet in here. Pretty smooth ride, especially on the, you know, better kept highways out here. And this one also does have the full driver assistance package, which is almost $2,000 extra, and that's the only way you get all the active stuff. Otherwise, you have basically automatic emergency braking and blind spot monitoring as standard, and everything else is an extra cost option. If you don't want all the other active stuff, you can just pay $600 for adaptive cruise control, but otherwise you got to pay this $2,000 package. And as we're going around this gentle corner here, just kind of hovering my hands on the wheel, letting it do its thing here, it does have, you know, this one, again, having all those active features, has adaptive cruise control, but also the active lane keep assist. It also does do automatic lane changes here, which is really impressive. And outside of Cadillac's hands-free Super Cruise system, this is, I think, the best as far as doing those assertive lane changes. Whenever you're doing adaptive cruising here and it sees a slow car in front of you, I mean, it looks for an opening and, you know, goes right for it there. Very assertive. So it's nice if you like that extra assistance, helps you to kind of relax on a long highway drive, but it's just unfortunate that you still got to pay extra for, you know, some of this stuff. I could understand, you know, a few of these top features, you know, the auto lane changes and stuff maybe being extra, but these days, I mean, a base Toyota Corolla gives you adaptive cruise control and has for many years now. The fact that Mercedes, again, is nickel and diming people for USB-C jacks, for adaptive cruise, for, you know, all these other active safety features that most other companies make standard, including some of the competitors, it's worth noting, give you most of this stuff as standard, not even just Corollas, but BMWs and Audis. You know, it's just kind of in poor taste that Mercedes is still charging people for the safety stuff, in my opinion. Again, at least as far as the basics goes. And, you know, but other than that, it's a really nice highway cruiser. And it does do really good lane keep assistance, by the way, for anyone that's, you know, curious about the performance of it. You know, so far it's been doing a pretty good job here. And I was also really impressed with it, again, in the E450 all-terrain, where I did a little bit more highway driving in that as well. But really well done, and, you know, nice and quiet too. Of course, we have the active exhaust, which quiets down anyway in comfort mode, but, you know, out here on the highway, you know, it doesn't sound like there's any engine going, honestly, especially not a performance one. So, you know, really nicely done as far as that goes too. But the last couple of things I'll mention here are the fuel economy and then the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as fuel economy goes here, so these are rated at 18 mpg in the city, 24 on the highway, and 21 combined. In my driving here, which has been mostly around town suburban stuff, did do a little bit of highway driving though. My average has been 17.7. And I have, you know, been getting on it a little bit, but most of the week's just been driving around with the family, you know, taking it easy, not really exploiting the performance very much. And so with, you know, this kind of driving, I'm typically getting 1 to 2 mpg less than the city rating anyway. So to me, to be actually hitting the city rating means this potentially could be a little bit more efficient than even the numbers suggest if you do, you know, take it easier and drive, you know, more. I've only gone through a little more than a quarter tank of gas here, put about 101 miles on it currently. You know, you also do have the 48 volt component, which I didn't mention earlier, but in addition to just improving performance, that will also give you, you know, the ability to do the extended stop start thing if you want to, although that sometimes gets caught with a slow lag before it kicks back on the engine and isn't perfectly timed there with that. But, you know, like now we're sitting in a red light, it turns off the engine, saves you some gas there. And so that extra little bit of efficiency is certainly nice, but it also, you know, doesn't shut down the engine whenever you're coasting or anything like some of the more advanced 48 volt systems do from other manufacturers. So this is just basically going to be an extended stop start system, and that's fine. You know, the focus of this again is to enhance the performance in this one, but you know, just note that that will help your efficiency maybe a tiny bit, but, you know, not quite as much as maybe some others out there. But then the last thing to mention here is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So these start at $71,750, including destination, and then this one as tested is $78,830. And at that price point, I'd say it's towards the upper end of the spectrum here, but the caveat is that all the competitors don't give you as much horsepower. The only way to get more horsepower than this in this segment is to go for a Macan GTS, which is going to be over $100,000 comparably equipped, and even a regular Macan S, which has only 375 horsepower, comes in, you know, like $95,000 with all the same stuff that this has on it. So I'm not even going to talk about the Porsche, because just you're paying the Porsche tax with those, and not really any kind of value proposition there. But as far as the core competitors, there's 3 that I think do give you similar experiences, even though it's not, again, quite as much horsepower, very similar experiences for a nice savings. The first is the Genesis GV70, the 3.5T Sport Prestige version. Now, I will say that has heavier steering. It doesn't have the rear wheel steer, doesn't have some of the more fancy stuff. It's not quite as dynamic of an experience for sure, but if you're just someone who wants, you know, a bunch of power, that also makes it from a good old-fashioned twin-turbo V6, something that, again, all the competitors to this offer that this doesn't. And so Mercedes is really the first to kind of do this switch over to electrification for this segment and this performance segment in particular. But, you know, the Genesis is about $9,000 less. Those comparably equipped are basically right at $70,000. So if you just want, you know, roughly 400 horsepower and you want it in luxury and comfort, I think that the Genesis GV70 is definitely going to be the better buy there. And I was really impressed with it whenever I had one for a week a couple of years ago. And then the other one, if you do want to stick with a German luxury brand, you can still get discounts there. So there's also the Audi SQ5 Sportback, which is a direct competitor to this. You know, it's the S branding, it's sportier, it has the Sportback thing. With the GV70 is not so much really a Sportback, even though it is, you know, still kind of a racy for its roofline. But, you know, the Sportback SQ5 is, you know, direct competitor to this. That does do a lot less horsepower. That's 349 horsepower. But you know, 0 to 60 and stuff isn't too far off of this still. And you know, it has a regular torque converter, 8-speed automatic, so it's going to be smoother. You can also get an air suspension in those to give a better ride. And again, not quite as dynamic as this. This is, I'd say, the most hardcore of the bunch. But again, if you just want a good amount of power, a sportier experience, and that again does it from a twin turbo V6. That's another one that comes in several $1,000s less than this, and it's really nice savings. And the last one I'll mention that is probably, I'd say, the closest to this dynamically would be the BMW X4 M40i. Now, I've not driven or reviewed that, but I did do the X3 M40i a few years back, so I do have kind of a baseline there for comparison's sake. And that just has a regular torque converter, 8-speed ZF automatic, really nice and snappy. You have, again, a 6-cylinder turbocharged engine in that sounds fantastic, gives you great exhaust notes, same crackling and popping fun as this. Also is the second most horsepower behind the Mercedes here at 382 horsepower in those. And it's a really nice package, and again, like I said, you have a little bit more practicality, I'd say, as far as interior storage space and things like that. And those are comparably equipped about $700 less than this. I mean, at that point, we're talking a rounding error. So I'd say basically they're the same price. But so for me, I just think it's a little more comfortable, and still gives you the same crackling and popping fun. You have awesome 6-cylinder sounds and fun there and all that. And so it just makes the GLC a little bit of a harder thing to justify. Now, if you are someone who, again, wants the most hardcore thing with a little bit of a stiffer ride, a little bit more extreme power delivery, the dual clutch, the roughness of that, there's some people that like that stuff. If you like all that extra engagement of, a rougher transmission, a rougher ride, if all that sounds really good to you and you want it in this very pretty package with the GLC exterior and interior, there's certainly a niche here for this. I just feel like, the others, especially the ones that come in at a discount, are, a little bit more tempting. And, I'd most likely end up just going for, the GV70 or the BMW if it were me and my money. All of those are also about 100 to 200 pounds lighter than this as well. So if, that's something that you're excited about, maybe having slightly better handling there with those lighter, vehicles, that is another perk of those. But if you are someone that also just really likes the hot hatch kind of vibe with having a crazy boosted, frantic, turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, this does have that unique appeal. And so if you just want a hot hatch, but you need more space, you need more luxury, and you want it, in a bigger package, this kind of is this unique thing for someone who's maybe trying to graduate from, like a Golf R or something, has more money to spend these days. Something like this could really, I think, be a fun niche for those buyers as well. But overall, despite the fact that, there's some strong competitors and stuff, I still really like the GLC 43. It's still, a very cool way to spend nearly $80,000 and, have a lot of fun, have a lot of luxury and comfort. And it's just a very fun and very cool vehicle all around. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the GLC 43. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Mercedes-AMG for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.